Gotcha.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right, so let me go ahead and share the screen here. Ba, ba, da, ba. And I'm gonna move this down this way. Actually, here, this is fine. Okay, so let's put this, bam, Old Testament geography. And why? All right, so tonight that's what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss Old Testament geography and why does it even matter if we know Old Testament geography or not, okay? Most stories, some of the key components in the story are the characters, when it takes place, what is the dating of it, and the set, the location of it. Right? We've talked a lot in the Old Testament survey up till now about being able to know the characters and the dating, getting a picture of how things come together. We did that the last couple of weeks. But the setting where things take place is also a part of the story. Geography in storytelling is not like it's not just an extra detail. Actually, geography can be used to add meaning and richness and texture to the story. And places or geography can actually hold emotions and hold additional meaning. Like you think about if I was to talk about Ground Zero in Manhattan, there's a place that has a lot of emotions associated to it. So any story around that, it may be about the heroes involved, some of the tragedy, all of it. There's a lot tied up in that geography. Or if I were to talk about grandma's house and tell a story about grandma's house, you have all kinds of memories associated with that and feelings associated with it. And so the geography of the story will affect what's going, the actual story itself, okay? And so the Old Testament similarly takes place in a geography, and understanding that geography helps us flesh out the meaning in greater ways, okay? So tonight we're gonna make two maps. The first map is gonna be a map of the Middle East, and then the second map is gonna hone in on the land of Canaan, okay? So go ahead and get your stuff together. I'm gonna actually erase this, and we are gonna start our drawing, okay? So go ahead and get your pencil, and start by drawing a backward, oh wait, I moved it, a backward C over here on this side, okay? On that side of the paper. Got it? Then just below it, right here, draw kind of a bubbly thing, and then turn that into a peace sign, like that. Got it? And you can shade those in if you want, make them whatever color, blue. That's what I'm using here. These are some of the bodies of water, and we're gonna define those in just a minute. And then come on over to this side of the paper and draw like another finger that comes up just a little bit further. Okay? This is fun, isn't it?
It's like an ant.
It does. And off this one, you're gonna draw a Y, but here's how it goes. Draw one line that starts here and goes all the way up on top of our backward C. See that? And then start here and draw another one that goes just underneath it all the way over to that same area. Everybody good so far? All right. Then draw right about midway on our backward C right here. Draw a dot here like that. Come down, draw another dot. I know. And then in between, draw a line. Got it? Mm-hmm. So these are the major, so you should right now have what looks like a slug throwing a rope to another slug who's being attacked by a backward C, okay? Let's define what all of that is. You guys ready? So this over here is the Mediterranean Sea, Got it? So this body of water, this is the westernmost part of the Middle East, is the body of water known as the Mediterranean Sea. Down here is the Red Sea. Oh, we forgot one body of water that we'll add in just a minute. This is the Black Sea. Up here is the Tigris River. So the top river there is the Tigris River. The bottom one is the
Euphrates.
Cheater. Okay. All right. Up here we have the Sea of Galilee. The bottom one is the Dead Sea. And the little line that connects them, that's the Jordan River. Okay. Now there's one that we forgot. Sorry about that. We'll add it. Get my little drawing marker here. You ready? Right down here, you're going to make a Y. Okay. And this one is called the Nile River. Okay. Any questions about what we have so far? Yes, feel your artistic juices just bubbling up.
Oh man, they're bubbling.
My kids are having fun. I see that. All right. So to the north up here, because there's the Tigris River and the Euphrates River, this became one of the sources of civilization in an agrarian culture, a culture based on agriculture, where there was water, fresh water. That meant fertile lands, which meant wealth and power. And so we have two major sources of power that begin to emerge. The one at the top is known as Mesopotamia. Okay. Or not the top, that's considered the one to the east is Mesopotamia, and the one to the west is Egypt, which develops around the Nile River Delta. So we have the Tigris Euphrates, where Mesopotamia develops. Mesopotamia means in between the rivers. Okay. And so you have the civilizations of Mesopotamia. Now, in those civilizations, two major empires develop. And I'll write those in a different color. You have the empire of Babylon, and further west, Assyria. Okay. Now, these three, around these two major bodies of water, the Nile River Delta and the Mesopotamia, we have fertile lands. This is known as the Fertile Crescent from world history, the seat of human culture. Well, because of that, these three empires battled pretty consistently, okay? And the battles between the empires in the Mesopotamia and the empire in Egypt becomes the backdrop for the Bible. Now, when you are angry and you want to get in a fight with somebody, you generally try to find the most direct route between you and that person to go beat them up, right? The unfortunate part is from here to Egypt, right in this area, is the Arabian Desert. That's one S because it makes you skinny. Two S's adds weight. All right. So you have the Arabian Desert, not dessert. So instead of going through this Arabian Desert, which you couldn't go through, there was no water, what they would do is they would take a route that went from Mesopotamia down through this little sliver of land along the Mediterranean coast and then down into Egypt, or vice versa. From Egypt, they would come up the Mediterranean coast and go into Assyria, Babylon, wherever they were attacking. Okay. Now, this little strip of land between the Jordan and the Mediterranean is known as Canaan. Okay. And so you see, this is the very backdrop of the entire Old Testament. All of the writings that we're talking about come to bear in Canaan. Canaan is the crossroads of the entire world powers at that time. It was the crossroads of culture. From Mesopotamia, again, they would go down. And in fact, it gets a little more detailed. They would come down through here and they would get just south of the Sea of Galilee. And then they would follow a valley that goes right through here. Let me change my color real quick. Known as the Valley of Jezreel. And they would come down to here. They would travel along the Jordan. Then they would come back in at the end of the Jordan before the Dead Sea. And they would take another valley called the Jordan Valley, come back to the coast and travel all the way down to Egypt. And these two valleys wind up becoming major players throughout the Old Testament. The Valley of Jezreel has a mountain in it called Megiddo. Okay, Megiddo in Hebrew is Armageddon. And so this is where we get the term Armageddon. It's from this valley. And the reason was it's right smack between these Mesopotamian kingdoms and Egypt. And so many major conflicts took place in the Jezreel Valley at the mountain of Megiddo, or hill of Megiddo, or Armageddon. Okay. And so that's a little bit of the reasoning why this is such an important place. That Jezreel Valley, that whole Canaan, it really was the crossroads. And so this area was an incredibly international area. You had peoples that were coming over from India and China, and they would come through the Mesopotamia and then travel through Canaan into Egypt. Conversely, through Egypt, that was the gateway for all of Africa. Think about the Ethiopian eunuch coming up from Africa through Egypt and through this little sliver of land. And so it was an incredibly international place. Another interesting thing about the Valley of Jezreel is there's a little city there called Nazareth. And so a little boy from Nazareth, which is kind of out in the middle of the country, could see incredible international flavor as caravans from all over the world traveled through these valleys, AKA Jesus as a young man growing up and understanding the whole world. Okay. And so that area, this strip, is like an international airport. People from all over the world, cultures all over, would travel to do trade, spices, gold, materials, made goods, all that kind of stuff would travel through this area from cultures all over the world to all the major powers of the time. Okay. And so this is an overall image of the Middle East. Now, this is our picture. We wanted to draw one so that people would get an image. You can look up a picture of the Middle East, but these are the major geographic markers in the story of the Bible when it comes to the Middle East. Oh, one last thing is that the Sea of Galilee is not mentioned in the Old Testament. It's called Gennesaret, and it's barely mentioned, so it's really not a big deal. But this area was known as Galilee of the nations in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1. And that's the reason why, is because so many nations traveled through there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to transition, and we're going to focus in on this area right here. Okay, and we're going to switch and start drawing a map of that. But real quick, let me stop sharing. Go away. Stop sharing. Let's open up. Do we have any questions about our map of the Middle East? So let's see some maps. Show me some maps. I want to see how the artwork went. Oh, wow. Look at Katie's.
I know.
Man, Kiara, very nice.
Oh, look at the
John, that's
tablet.
awesome.
May-Kay.
I like it, May-Kay.
I like the tablet.
Oh.
Nice, Tortillas.
I-
look at the calendars.
Such detail.
Well played.
Too
Man,
funny.
they went above and beyond, didn't they?
I love it.
All right, so are there any questions about the overall Middle East? Now, again, remember, Canaan is that little strip between those major power centers, if you would. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, all right? So now what we're going to do is let me pull up our whiteboard again. Okay, now what I would do is everybody get your second piece of paper, and the next one I would do vertically. So the last one horizontal, this one I would do vertically, okay? And we already gave a bit of an image of where we're gonna be starting out. And so this over here, this left side, just kind of do a little bubble like this to represent the Mediterranean Sea. All right, so that gives us our coastline on that side. And then over here, a little bit bigger, got your Sea of Galilee. Down here, you have the Dead Sea. And in between, we have the Jordan River. Let's go ahead and put those in there. Sea of Jordan River. All right. I'm not going to put Mediterranean Ocean or Mediterranean Sea. We know that one. Okay. Let's get down a little bit more. This is the land of Canaan. Is this little strip right here? Okay. Let's talk about some of the important topography. Over towards the side here, I'm going to do this in a kind of a brownish to give you the image. This is called the coastal plain. Oh, that's not brown. That's clearly blue. That's more water. This right here is called the coastal plain. It's relatively flat. It's right along the Mediterranean Sea. And for the most part, it had some, it could be farmed some, and it was pretty flat, okay? Over to the side over, as you move to the east, towards the Jordan though, two things happen. In the southern part, you have what's known as the Jordan Mountain Ridge. Right in here you have, oh, that went up too high. Let me cut that out. All right. So down here, it gets very mountainous. Okay. But this one is brown because it's very arid. When you get just to the top of the Dead Sea, things change and it actually becomes really green, very verdant. But it gets, the more north you go, the more hilly it gets. The highest it gets is Mount Hermon, which is a peak of about 10,000 feet. It's a snow-covered mountain in the north. And so as you come down, the mountains get lower and the whole area becomes arid, okay? In between, this area in between here is valleys and flatlands. And down to the south, it's just arid desert, okay? Let me see, what else did I want to say about that? You have the coastal plain. In the arid area, this flat area is known as the Shevla, and then that leads into the hill country. This area is just known as the Jordan, or the Valley of Jezreel. and then it transitions into the hill country. But what happens after the hill country as you move east, there's what's called the Jordan Rift Valley. Okay, there's an extreme drop off from this mountain range down into the Jordan, the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, and Dead Sea, to the point where the Dead Sea is the lowest exposed or land point on the entire planet. I think it's around 1,300 feet below sea level. And so you go from 10,000 feet up at Mount Hermon. Right around here is where Jerusalem is. Jerusalem is around 2,500 feet above sea level. As you go further south, these mountains are around 1,000 feet. And then you get to the Dead Sea where it just drops off and goes down to around 1,300 feet below sea level. Okay. And so this is like the layout of Canaan, and a couple of things happen. Let me put a couple of major places in here. Let me see, where's my, what did I want to use? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So let's start here. Right on the edge of where it's arid and where it is green, we're going to put a star there and one just below it. Okay. And let's label those. Let me get my color. Let's do red. Okay. This star is Jerusalem. Okay. The one below it is Bethlehem. And then just a little bit north into the east of Jerusalem, right over here on the, actually it's further down, I messed that up. Undo you. It's like almost directly down, right on the edge of that arid. That's where you find Jericho. Okay, so these are a couple of significant places. A few more while we're doing this. Up north, right around here is where you have Dan, and down south you have Beersheba. And this is important because sometimes when the Bible refers to is referring to the entire promised land, it will say Dan to Beersheba. And what they're trying to say, what they're trying to communicate is the entire land of Canaan. Okay. And so that was a kind of another way of saying the whole land of Canaan. All right. A couple of things, like with Jerusalem, if you look to the east of Jerusalem, to the west of Jerusalem, it is green and verdant and beautiful. If you look to the west of Jerusalem, green and verdant. If you look to the east of Jerusalem, it immediately becomes arid and desert. Okay, so it sits right there on that ridge. A couple of more cool things about the topography. Most of the travel would have happened through here, not necessarily up into the hill country. And so this area would have been very international, where this area was far more religious, obviously Jerusalem being the capital of that. And so this is a kind of a basic framework of the Middle East, and then on a smaller level, focusing in on Canaan, some of the key spots. Okay. Anything you would add about that? So let me see. Do we have any questions before I stop sharing? Do you guys want me to leave it up for just a minute? Or are you guys pretty?
Rich, I got a quick question.
Yep.
If that area toward the coastal plain area was where everyone traveled,
yep,
why weren't there any large cities over there?
There actually are.
What are those?
So let me see. I have another map. I'm going to share another story with you, and I'm going to show you another map in just a minute. But the coastal plain were places like Ekron. I think Gath is a little further in. These places were dominated by the Philistines. The Philistines, they're known as the people of the sea, and so they were actually dominated by the Philistines. That's where they come from, and so they have made any of the major cities of the Philistines, Ekron, Gath, those would all be on that side.
In New Testament times, isn't that where Caesarea Maritime would be?
Yeah, that's Caesarea is not till the Roman times. Yeah. Further up is up in this area is where you have the nations of Tyre and Sidon that you read about in the Old Testament. So the Jews didn't like the ocean; they were terrified of the ocean, so they didn't go down to the beach very much. All right, so and let's see the maps. How'd it go? Hey, man, look at those hills.
So cool. They look
Miko,
so
that's
good,
really
guys.
good on the
I
tablet.
know, it's so impressive. I love
Very
these guys.
nice. Who's that? That's a really good one. Cody, I like. Okay, good. That's awesome. So this gives you the kind of an overview of the geography, both of the Middle East, where it takes place, and then as you get down into Canaan. And so what I want to do is I want to close out with 2 examples of why knowing the geography helps us understand the story, okay? The first one is in 2 Kings chapter 18. Look over there. 2 Kings chapter 18, we're going to read verse 13 through 18. Oh, I have the right verses. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. Okay, so it starts out saying he's the king of Assyria. Now look at your map of Middle East. Where is Assyria? It's in the north, right? So now you know Sennacherib is a king that is coming down into Canaan, and he's attacking all the fortified cities of Judah and capturing them. So Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent this message to the king of Assyria at Lachish: I have done wrong, withdraw from me and I'll pay you whatever you demand. He basically says, listen, you're taking over my country. You can have whatever you want. But again, a king from Assyria, why is he coming through Canaan trying to take over the cities? Is it because he just likes the real estate in Canaan? No, he's trying to get to Egypt. Remember? And so Hezekiah says, listen, I'll pay you tribute, just leave me alone. And then verse 16, at this time, Hezekiah, king of Judah, stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord, and he gave it to the king. So he just starts paying the king of Assyria not to destroy everything, okay? And then in verse 19, jump over to chapter 19, verse 8 through 9. Basically, Sennacherib threatens Jerusalem. Hezekiah goes to Isaiah and asks him to prophesy for him. He says a prayer. And then in verse 18 and 19 of Second Kings, verse 19, it says, they have thrown, no, that's not it. 8 or 9, I'm sorry. It says, when the field commander heard that the king of Assyria had left Lachish, he withdrew and found the king fighting at Libnah. Now Sennacherib received report that Turka, the king of Cush, was marching out to fight against him. So he again sent a messenger to Hezekiah. Now, it says that Turka, the king of Cush, right? Does anybody have a footnote on what that's talking about in their Bible? Anybody? Cush. The Nile region. Cush was another name for the Egyptian empire. It was the Cushite empire was that whole area of the Nile Delta. So again, the king from Egypt or from Cush is now going up and fighting the king from Assyria. And so the whole story here is not that the king of Assyria hates Jerusalem and wants to take over Jerusalem. The king of Assyria wants to get to Egypt. the king of Egypt is coming up and he's fighting against the Assyrian king. And so again, you see the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, Canaan, is caught between these two world powers. Does that make sense? Now, why is this a big deal? If you look back in chapter 18, verse 21, as Sennacherib is trying to intimidate Jerusalem and the king, in verse 21, he says, look, I know you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, what pierces the hand of anyone who leans it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. Okay, so Sennacherib is saying, you think you're safe against me. I'm the Assyrian king. You think you're safe against me because you're friends with the Egyptian king. But that's not going to work. I'm still going to destroy you. Now, why is this a big deal? As you read the Old Testament, a theme emerges where Israel is called by God to not depend on the kings of the north, to not depend on the kings of the south, or I'm sorry, the kings of the east or the kings of the west, but instead to depend on him. And so here you have this situation where the little nation of Israel is caught between the fight of two world powers. And what does Hezekiah do? He humbles himself before God and he prays. And what does God do? God delivers Jerusalem from the hands of Sennacherib, not through the Egyptians, but through an angel that comes and wipes out the army of Sennacherib. Does that make sense? And so again, you can read this story and it can just be about, okay, Jerusalem's getting attacked by some king. I don't know who anybody is. I don't know where they are. I don't know what's going on. And sure, it's a great story that if I pray, then God will deliver me from some mean army. But it takes on a whole nother level when you understand all of the politics that are involved in this because of the geography. And you understand this is much more about if Israel is going to be a nation that depends on God or depends on political alliances. Does that make sense? You see, this is what understanding the geography, the effect it has on the stories that we read in the Old Testament. And so I know it's not always fun to jump into geography. It's kind of intimidating when you don't know anything. But as you learn these things, they add layers and depth and richness to the stories that we read in the Old Testament. Let's look at one more, okay? Oh, do you have a question, John?
Yeah, what did we say was to the right of the Jordan River?
That basically is arid. That's where the Sahara Desert starts. It's also known as the Transjordan, the other side of the Jordan. Obviously, for a little while, it would have had some level of greenness because of the Jordan River itself, but it very quickly becomes arid and you are in the Sahara Desert. I'm sorry, not the Sahara, the Arabian Desert.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's look at one more. Look over in a very famous story, 1 Samuel chapter 17. First Samuel 17, this is the famous story of David and Goliath. In verse 1, it reads, now the Philistines gathered forces for war and assembled at Soko in Judah. They pitched tents at Ephes Dammim between Soko and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped at the valley of Elah and drew up their battle lines to meet the Philistines. Okay, so this is the geographical background of the story of David and Goliath, right? We've all studied the David and Goliath. We've heard it preached 100 times. And the main focus is if you're faithful and you throw that rock, God is with you, right? Okay, that is true. That is an awesome lesson. I'm going to share. Let me pull up a couple pictures here that I want to share of this area. Let's see. Yep, you. And then. Okay, let's see which one we want to do first. Let me screen share. Boom. Let's do this one first. Okay, this isn't kind of an overview of, oh no, this is the up close one. That backfired. Why is that happening? All right, we'll do this one first, then I'll close it out. Okay, so this is, remember it says that they gathered, assembled at Soko in Judah. And so here you can begin to see, let me see if I move it down. This is taken from the vantage point of Azekah. And it says that the Philistine troops went from Soko, see Soko right here, to Azekah in the valley of Elah. The Elah Valley is this little left.
You can't see anything, or at least I can't.
Do you guys see the sharing?
It
No,
just
I
says you
see-
started screen
I see
sharing.
Super Bowl champs have.
No, yeah, Super Bowl champs.
go.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. All right, let me try this again. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, technology.
Oh, I see. Okay. Let me let's try this one more again. So we'll start with this one. Can you guys see that?
Now I see it.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yay.
There we go. So this picture is
Great.
taken from this picture is taken from Azekah, okay? And it says that the Philistine troops were in the valley of Elah from Azekah to Soko. See this right here, Soko? This is the valley of Elah. It's this little left-hand turn, okay? And so the troops, the Philistine troops, are from here all the way around this corner to Soko, right? It says Saul and his Israelites assembled and camped at the valley of Elah and drew up the battle lines of the Philistine. Their camp is this little spot right over here. And so the geography tells us that what's going on is the Philistine army is massive and encompasses this whole valley right here. And the Israelite army is this little area right here. Okay? And then the battle takes place here, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let me show you one more picture. All right. So this is kind of the overview of Canaan. All right. And it says here's Azekah, here's Soko, here's the valley of Elah. But here's some important things to understand. Remember, we talked about these cities here when Nick asked about the cities along the coast: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath. These are all Philistine cities. So basically, this is the kingdom of the Philistines over to the left. Then you have this right here. Once you get past this, now you have Hebron, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Gibeah. This is where Judah starts. And so this battle is not only significant in you just want to win every battle you fight. If the Philistines get past here, they now enter into being able to take over the entirety of Israel. Again, geography tells us a bigger story, or it adds to the story that this battle, if they lose this battle, they basically lose their footing in Canaan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so again, you see that the geography adds layers to the story. And then that texture is actually flipped if you jump over to verse 52, after David slays Goliath, and the Israelite army begins to have courage and attack. It says in verse 52, then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. And so again, you have that same use of what did I do there? I'm not good at technology. There you go. So it says that they pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. And so they drove them, instead of the Philistines overpowering and surging this way, you see them driving them back to the gates of Gath and the gates of Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered the camp. And so again, you see the geography tells us that they've not only defeated them, but they're now pushing them back into their own land in Philistia. Does that make sense? And so again, these are just ways that as we engage the geography begins to add richness and texture to the stories that we read in the Old Testament. Again, I know that this can be intimidating, especially if it's something new. Like, I've never really studied this stuff. I've never really paid a lot of attention to the geography. I just kind of gloss it over when I'm reading the story. So how do I begin to engage this in my study of the Bible? I think there's a couple things. Number one is just notice the geography. Again, it's very easy to gloss over it. Pay attention. Sometimes it's explicit. It says, hey, here's where this took place. And oftentimes when it does that, it's saying it for a reason, okay? And so look for those explicit things that come out. But then also look for the implicit things, like the story of Hezekiah, where just the overall political situation and where it took place and it being that land of Canaan between those two major powers allowed even the implicit understanding of the geography to inform your reading of these different stories, okay? So the first thing is just notice the geography. The second thing is learn. When you read something, look up, where is this place? Where, it's really easy to do now with Google. You just type in Bible map, whatever place, and it comes up pretty easily. So you can look it up. You can use atlases. They have beautiful, the back of our Bibles have atlases in them, as the Kelshes showed us. Use those, figure out where things are. I would also encourage you to use a Bible dictionary to look up the places and look at some of the history of other things that have happened there and why is it significant biblically. I think the other part is begin to develop a mental map, like we did tonight when you drew it. Like, it shouldn't be hard for you to envision, okay, here's where this is going on. I know where the Dead Sea is. I know where the Sea of Galilee is. I know where Jordan is and Jerusalem, and kind of begin to develop a mental map of the Middle East and of Canaan so that as you read, you can do it from an informed place. So notice it, begin to learn more about it, take it on slowly, but begin to learn about it. And then lastly, ask questions. Like, why would the biblical author include geographic details? What is trying to be communicated by the author through communicating these details? And what does this understanding do to the meaning of the text as we understand the geography? So these are just a couple of practicals of how to begin to read the whole Bible, but the Old Testament, including that layer that the authors added by including the geography to add to the texture and meaning of the scriptures. Sound good? All right, cool. That's the Old Testament geography and why. Any questions? Oh, so got some bad news. Our winner is going to be random. We're just going to pick a group out of a hand.
Make sure they're all separate.
My wife is giving them the fairest chance possible.
Okay.
Ready? Close my eyes. There you go. Oh, I picked two. Now I picked one. And the winner
We've
is
got Sean Roberts and the Stevens.
Yay.
We should have that team share their list.
What if the list isn't valid though? It probably is, but
What do you think, Sean?
so what if? So let's go over the list of the.
uh-oh. We
You
should
know, was it specifically? Yeah, was it only in the names counted? The snow or ice?
Yep.
She's muted. She's got the list.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Oh, you were just stalling for her.
Yeah. Here we go.
Let It Snow, Ice Ice Baby, Frosty the Snowman. Do you want to build a snowman? Snow, Snow, Snow from White Christmas. And I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas that has snow in it.
That's 6.
I thought that was 7.
Got mine.
I had no idea.
Our seventh one was, what's his name?
Glenn Campbell.
Glenn Campbell's lineman for the county. It has snow in it. That's our 7.
In it. There we go.
All right.
Of course
Does
it's for
anybody have
me.
7 titles?
Oh, titles. Oh. Sorry.
No, we understand there was some miscommunication about my instructions.
We got 7 titles.
They
There
did.
you go.
All right, so did either of the other 7 people, was it all in the titles? John and Miko or Hop and the Couches?
You got 5 in the title?
Kiara and Mia had the most.
I thought Kiara and Mia, I thought they had.
Yeah, who did actually have
Just
the
wanted
most?
to make sure that
in,
nobody else did.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
All right,
I'm not in the
so
title.
then the Lassiters and Kiara and Mia.
Yes. True winners.
Good
Congratulations.
job, guys.
It was hotly debated, but in the end, they were victorious. Dustin Davis, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be here, man.
Yeah, man. Why don't you close with a prayer, Dustin?
Do people know him?
Oh, why don't you introduce yourself? Say who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, hi. My name is Dustin Davis. I'm a brother from the Louisville church.
Yeah.
Down in Louisville, Kentucky. And made some friendships here slowly over the years. The first actually being Lily, who I heard just found out about her sister's situation today. Yeah, I took an impromptu trip to see the Charleston side.